What happens when an 11-year-old black boy with a big heart is erased from the very poster he inspired? No one expected his quiet speech to shake the entire district. What happened next changed the school, and far beyond. Kevin James sat cross-legged on the polished school hallway floor, sorting plastic bottle caps into an old fruit crate. Determination in every deliberate motion, while around him another world buzzed with teenage distractions. Someone elbowed a friend by the candy machine. Another kid spun a fidget spinner in circles. Two more stood nearby, loudly debating which cousin accidentally liked whose TikTok for the second time. And there was Kevin, quietly collecting scrap pieces of plastic, because caring, truly, deeply caring, meant more than any viral moment. This kid wasn't simply picking up trash. He'd organized a school-wide fundraiser to collect those caps, all proceeds earmarked to help a younger classmate with a rare medical condition that insurance dutifully declined as not covered. In other words, an 11-year-old single-handedly took action where adult systems shrugged and walked away. Smart, humble, kind, maybe too good for a world that's more comfortable with black kids staying small, silent, and unseen, especially when they step up without asking permission. On that same morning, fresh, glossy posters appeared on the wall above him. Heroes of the Cap for Care project, the banner proclaimed. Smiling faces stared proudly back from those posters, as if they'd all been airbrushed by a professional. Blonde-haired Jeremy, pale-faced Cindy, Eric the kid of Vietnamese descent. Just about anyone, except Kevin. His face wasn't there. He rose stiff as a soldier at parade rest and moved closer, eyes narrowing, heartbeat doing the dull thud in his chest like an alarm begging to go off. His mind tried to search for some logical explanation, because an 11-year-old's heart isn't built for the bitter sting of being erased. And yet here he was, trying hard to make sense of that scream within him. A small voice echoed behind him, thin and incredulous. "Why isn't that your face on the poster?" It was Logan, a first grader with big watchful owl eyes, one of the littlest volunteers who'd helped Kevin in the cafeteria. And look at that. Kids asking the very questions grown-ups dodge, like they're radioactive hot garbage. Kevin choked back the lump in his throat but forced his voice calm. He wasn't going to appear weak, not today, not here, especially not after doing more good than any of those glossy gradient posters claimed. "Maybe they forgot," he said. His voice cracked, betraying him. "Or maybe they ran out of space." Just then, the door to the main office swung open with a snap that cut the hallway buzz. Principal Grayson appeared in the doorway. Tall, rigid posture, skin that seemed carved from old newspapers preserved in yellowed ink, a sharp suit as stiff as his moral compass, if he possessed one, and a tie so dark cherry it looked like he was trying to mimic authority by force. He glided closer, eyes narrow. "Only students who filed through the official channels are on the poster," he sneered, voice like stale bureaucracy. "Your submission wasn't teacher verified in time." He offered no thanks. "No, we appreciate your idea." Just that cold, bureaucratic belch, as if Kevin were a file nobody wants to read. Logan flinched, whispering under his breath, "But he started the whole thing." Grayson shot the kid a look that screamed irritation, no trace of empathy. "Procedures matter, son. This is a school, not a playhouse." If Kevin could speak the unfiltered truth, he'd tell the principal that procedures are often built to hide inconvenient truths, like a child with dark skin and sharp ideas. That procedures are the easiest way to let someone else take credit, to step over a kid like him and pretend it was all an oversight. He froze. His legs felt rooted in concrete. But then slowly, deliberately, he walked along the row of posters until he stood in front of the cork notice board. Pulling out the photo he'd submitted, framed with hope, and that the rumor mill said was lost, he lifted it gently. Without a word, he taped it to the board next to the branded hero faces. Then he took a pen from his pocket and scrawled beneath it, in deliberate, youthful handwriting, "I helped, even if nobody noticed." He stepped back. Silence hung heavy enough to choke on. Not a teacher moved, not a classmate dared to speak. Only Peter, the janitor, black, weathered, steady, walked by, nodded once and murmured, "Well done, kid." No applause, no pats on the shoulder, just that single quiet acknowledgement from someone who saw. Kevin picked up his crate of now empty caps and walked out, shoulders stiff, but his heart strangely burned with hope and fury and a feeling of being stolen. Stolen from recognition, stolen from belonging, stolen from that glimmer of I matter. When he got home, the hush in the house spoke volumes. His mother, Tony, veteran night shift nurse, looked at him and knew before a word escaped his mouth. She recognized that same faraway gaze he got when real hurt flooded his young soul. A hurt older than him, older than her, older than this house. It carried echoes of southern fields, freedom won and then snatched, journeys of oppression that threaded through generations and every empty poster frame. "What happened, baby?" she asked softly, almost hesitant, as if disturbing the history in that look would start an avalanche. Kevin shrugged but finally muttered, "They posted the posters today. I wasn't on them." Tony crouched in front of him, hand on his shoulder, eyes steady. "Listen, Kevin," she said, voice like tempered iron with a velvet center. "You did it all right. Even if they refuse to hang your face, you still placed something more important. Your truth, right where everyone can see it." He said nothing. He didn't want soothing. He wanted truth, not a Band-Aid on a wound that screamed for something stronger. "You know who you are," Tony continued, voice full of legacy and kind fire, "and sooner or later they'll know it too. But here's the catch. He's 11, and while words about pride and identity resonate, for a kid, justice is a sticker on a chart or a photo on the wall. He dreams in concrete, not theory." That night he fell asleep with a full stomach, but a hollow heart, clutching a pillow to his chest. In his dreams, he walked those hallway floors again, but all he saw was empty poster after empty poster. And whenever he passed by, the silence gutted him all over again. What happened next changed everything. You do not want to miss how this unfolds. Monday mornings at Roseview Elementary were always sluggish, dragged in like wet laundry, full of half-asleep kids, lukewarm coffee for teachers, and that special kind of inertia that makes a whole school feel like it's stuck in slow motion. But this Monday had a different kind of quiet, because Kevin James wasn't there. No little footsteps echoing in the hall, no crate full of bottle caps, no nods of encouragement to Logan. His chair in class sat empty, like a silence that screamed louder than a fire drill. And the people who knew, the ones who had watched that poster go up without his face, felt that emptiness like guilt pressing down on their shoulders. Mrs. Holland, their homeroom teacher, barely kept eye contact when students asked, "Is Kevin sick?" Her replies were soft, awkward. "Maybe he caught a cold," she said, with the enthusiasm of someone reciting a fake excuse they were handed 5 minutes ago. She wasn't technically lying. She just didn't have the courage to admit the truth. Like so many adults, she found comfort in vague language, a way to hide from accountability with phrases that meant nothing and did even less. Meanwhile, in the teacher's lounge, hell was breaking loose. Laura's father, Laura being the little girl with the rare illness the CAP fundraiser had been created for, had posted in the school's official parent forum. Not a rant, not a vague concern, just a picture of Kevin, standing next to his crate. The caption read, "Can someone explain why the child who started this project isn't on the posters?" Silence hit the chat like a power outage, and then an avalanche. "I wondered the same thing. My kid told me it was Kevin's idea. How come every single face on that poster is white?" In less than 15 minutes, the parent chat transformed into a digital wildfire. Concern turned to fury, questions turned into demands. And Principal Grayson, standing in his office like a general in a collapsing fortress, snapped at his PR coordinator. "Why is this kid still in the public eye?" The public eye, as if Kevin James were some kind of threat to national security instead of an 11-year-old who wanted to help a sick classmate. You'd think Grayson was managing a political campaign, not a public school. That same day, a visibly shaken Mrs. Holland tried to call Kevin in, but Kevin wasn't coming. His mother had already emailed the school administration. "My son will not attend until further notice. He is emotionally devastated, and you know why." No one responded, not even with a "thank you for your message." Just the kind of institutional silence that reeks of fear and guilt, the kind that festers behind polished bulletin boards and canned mission statements. Wednesday morning, Kevin came back. Not because he forgave them, but because silence was eating him from the inside out. And he knew, sometimes you return not to play the game, but to flip the board. He walked into that building with a calm that didn't belong to a child. Head high, shoulders set, like he was walking the halls of a court, not a school. And maybe in a way, that's exactly what he was doing. Because he wasn't returning to learn. He was returning to confront. He didn't go to class, didn't stop at his locker. Instead, Kevin turned straight toward the front office and opened the door to the principal's office without knocking. Inside were three people: Grayson, sitting stiff behind his desk, Assistant Principal Spencer, who looked like she hadn't slept in days, and a man in a gray suit who smelled like policy meetings and safe answers, a representative from the school district, supposedly on an informal visit. Kevin stood in front of them and spoke without shaking. "Mr. Grayson, I have a question." The room fell quiet, the kind of silence that holds its breath. If I were white, would my face have been on the poster? You could almost hear the temperature drop, not in degrees, but in discomfort. Grayson leaned back slowly, his face hardening like cooling wax. "You're accusing us of racism?" he said, his voice flat and chilling. "You didn't register through the official channels? There are procedures, Kevin. We have rules." Kevin reached into his backpack and pulled out a single piece of paper, laid it on the desk like it was a royal flush. "Here's a copy of the parent committee's letter. It clearly says the initiative was mine. They confirm I started it." Spencer blinked rapidly. Grayson's throat bobbed once in a dry swallow. The district man's pen tapped quietly before he opened a small notepad. "So was this a procedural oversight, Mr. Grayson?" Kevin asked again. Calm, clear. "You don't understand how the system works, young man," Grayson began, voice wobbling now. Kevin didn't let him finish. "The system?" he echoed. "Is that what you call it? The thing that erases us from pictures, from lists, from history?" Grayson tried to smile. It didn't land. "You're making this bigger than it is. This was just a mistake." Kevin narrowed his eyes and then, cool, deliberate, he delivered the line that would echo for days. "A mistake is when you misspell a name. This wasn't a typo. This was a decision, a choice, to delete, to silence, to push aside." The district rep's pen moved fast. He wasn't taking notes. He was collecting evidence. The teacher's lounge imploded that afternoon. Denials flew like dodgeballs in a gym class. "I didn't see the final poster. I wasn't on the selection committee. I said we should have asked more questions." But it was too late, because the internet was doing what the system wouldn't, telling the truth. Kevin's photo, the same one he taped up himself with the caption, "I helped," even if nobody noticed, started spreading like wind through dry leaves. Parents shared it. Students reposted it. A local radio station mentioned it. And by 4 p.m., the school district called Grayson. "We're drafting a press release. Your name can be on it or under it." The next morning, an assembly was called. The entire school packed into the auditorium. Even kids who usually skipped out found a seat. Rumor had it, something big was coming. Kevin was brought on stage. Not as a guest, as a truth teller. Grayson, standing beside him, held a microphone that suddenly felt like a punishment. "This student," he began, his voice struggling to sound in control, "has done more for our school than we properly recognized. We offer our sincere apology." The applause was soft, respectful, but hollow, not because they didn't support Kevin, but because everyone knew it was too little, too late. A week later, Grayson was gone, officially retired for personal reasons. Unofficially, drowned in a scandal of his own making. The system had used him to maintain appearances, until he became the appearance that needed hiding. Kevin? He didn't brag, didn't strut, he simply kept moving. Not because it was over, but because he understood. This was never just about a poster. It was about who gets seen, who gets ignored, and what happens when one kid dares to demand better, for himself and for every child who ever got pushed out of the frame. This is the climax. Everything you've waited for. It's happening now. Stay close to witness how the truth reshapes the game. Roseview Elementary didn't know what to do with Kevin James. To some, he was still just a fifth grader. Small, wiry, curls tight against his scalp, shirt always tucked in like he had somewhere important to be. But after the poster scandal, his name wasn't just whispered in hallways. It was echoed in city hall meetings, printed in the local paper, quoted by parents, activists, and that one retired teacher who finally opened a Twitter account just to say, "This boy understands justice." His words, "I helped," even if nobody noticed, had gone from handwritten note under a photo to a rallying cry, the kind that parents chanted while holding signs outside the school district's central office, the kind that made PR departments sweat. And all week, the school tried to clean up the mess. They unveiled a new poster. This time, Kevin's face sat right in the center, surrounded by the others, as if he'd always been there. They handed him certificates of recognition. Shiny, pre-printed, misspelled his last name on the first one, corrected it on the second. They even offered him a week of free lunch, like that was going to fix what they broke. Kevin didn't smile once. Not because he wanted revenge. He didn't even ask for an apology. What he wanted was clarity, truth, an answer to a question that most adults were too scared to ask out loud. Why is the system that's supposed to teach us fairness the first one to break it? And more than that, why do grown-ups panic not at the injustice itself, but at the reaction to that injustice? Like the silence breaking is somehow worse than the thing that caused it. That's where it all came to a head, at the school board's scheduled parent advisory meeting. Ironically, the meeting had been on the calendar for months. The topic? Success and inclusion. You could almost laugh, right? A room full of adults planning to talk about how inclusive their school was, right after they nearly erased the black boy who created the biggest student-led project of the year. But what happened that night? No one saw it coming. The auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, board members, local journalists, even one guy with a podcast mic clipped to his collar, already live streaming. At the front, the interim principal, Mrs. Louise, new, cautious, clearly aware of the minefield she'd inherited, nodded once. The microphone passed from hand to hand until it landed in front of Kevin. Kevin James, 11 years old, no suit, no notes, no script. Just his truth. "I wasn't planning to be here," he started, voice steady. "I just wanted to help. I didn't want a trophy. I didn't want my face on a wall. But when they put up the posters and left me out, I realized some people don't think what I did counts." The room fell silent. Not awkward, not polite, reverent. "I was told I didn't follow the formal process, but if the process is what erases people like me, maybe it's the process that needs fixing." He paused. "I'm not mad. I'm not here to point fingers. I just want to make sure no other kid ever feels like their effort doesn't matter because of their skin color or because they didn't go through the right office." Heads nodded across the room, kids on the floor in front, leaning forward, wide-eyed, teachers shifting uncomfortably, some adults teary, others stunned. Because Kevin didn't sound like a kid up there. He sounded like history whispering through him. "I don't want to be your symbol," he said plainly. "I just want to be Kevin, the kid who did something good, who got seen, not because people got mad, but because it was the right thing to do." The first person to clap was a woman in the back, then another. Then the whole room stood. It wasn't a polite standing ovation. It was respect. It was truth. It was 200 people silently agreeing. This kid just told us who we are and what we better fix. And in the back corner, nearly invisible in the shadows, stood Grayson, former principal, still in a suit, still trying to look composed. But when Kevin's eyes met his, Grayson dropped his gaze. Because sometimes it only takes a child speaking clearly to make the powerful feel small. Within a week, the school district announced a new initiative, a full audit of visual representation across all schools. In plain speak, they were finally checking who else had been left out of yearbooks, posters, honor rolls, project highlights, the forgotten names, the missing faces. Professional development trainings for faculty began. The district's PR coordinator resigned. And in a first for Roseview, the student newspaper ran its lead story not on Student of the Year, but on grassroots leadership. Byline, interview with Kevin James. But what happened next? That turned Kevin from a local headline into something much bigger. One afternoon after school, he was called into the principal's office. Not for discipline, not even by Mrs. Louise. Inside sat a woman in her 40s, professionally dressed, firm eyes, kind mouth. "You probably don't know who I am," she began. "Amelia Rogers, Office of Educational Equity, City Department." Kevin raised his eyebrows, a little wary, but listening. I've been following your story. I didn't come to congratulate you. I came to ask for your help. She slid a folder across the desk. We have a leadership initiative. Usually it's for high schoolers. But we think you're ready. You'd speak on a panel. Share your experience. Help adults understand how systems really work, for better or worse. Interested? Kevin didn't answer right away. He looked out the window. Outside, kids played foursquare. A few gathered caps again. The project lived on quietly because ideas, once born from purpose, don't die easily. He turned back. If I get to tell the truth, he said, then yeah, I'm in. 1 month later, at City Hall, Kevin stood at a podium. No cue cards, no teleprompter, just him. When I was 11, he said, I was removed from a school poster. Not because I did anything wrong, but because the system had learned how to make certain people invisible, quietly. His voice didn't waver. It didn't rise. It didn't need to. But I also learned something. If one kid can make grown-ups think twice, then there's still hope. After the event, a woman in her 60s, clutching a tissue in one hand, hugged him and whispered, You gave us back something they took long ago. Our voice. And Kevin? He got it then. He hadn't just won a battle for himself. He joined a chain of resistance that stretched across generations, from those who had been silenced to those who refused to be. That evening, walking home, Kevin passed the school bulletin board again. His picture still hung there, but beside it, a new plaque read, Just because they don't see you doesn't mean you don't matter. Kevin James, 5th grade. If this story moved you, remember, sometimes it only takes one voice to make them all listen. The key is, never let it go quiet.